How's it going, guys? Welcome to the horror spaces. Now, I love old horror movies, and I think a lot of them I would never ever want to change, and I would hate for a remake to be done, as I think the original would never be topped. One of the many reasons is that they capture a point in time in history, and every time I watch them, I get transported to whatever era that movie takes place. Whether it's the cool 90s, like The Faculty, the experimental and youthful 80s, like Evil Dead, the groovy and slow burn 70s, like Halloween, and finally the clean and slick 60s, like anything from Alfred Hitchcock. That being said, I do believe there are some horror movies with amazing plots, stories, and ideas that aren't executed very well. And whether that time period was not capable of ever successfully being able to put that type of video to screen, or maybe they needed a different writer or director to truly give the material the respect it deserves, whatever the reason it may be, a remake is much needed. A remake would also put these films back into the limelight once again and give the movie the time in the sun to truly have a chance to spark a franchise or garner love from the mass audience, because there are lots of movies that maybe were good and don't need a remake in terms of its quality, but need a remake to modernize the film and bring it forth to contemporary audiences. Anyways, enough with the introduction. Let's get to the list, starting with, and in no particular order, the Amityville Horror. This is less about the original movie and more about the franchise as a whole. I've only ever seen the 2005 remake with Ryan Reynolds, and I saw the original a long, long time ago. But this franchise needs a remake. The studios agree with me, as from what I read, there are a couple movies that are already in the works in Amazon. And I'm not sure how far it is into production, but I'm glad that in the near future, my wish will come true. And hopefully, we will see a new and good Amityville horror. I just love an old school haunted house ghost story. I want to see another one done well, and this is the perfect foundation to do that. I actually was a bit sad that the Amityville horror was only briefly mentioned in The Conjuring 2, with that dope scene of Lorraine reenacting the murders that was super eerie and terrifying to watch. I wish James Wan would actually have a chance at that IP, whether it was in the Conjuring franchise or whatever franchise it may be. This remake is a case where the director needs to be chosen wisely, as ghost stories do or die on the tension and suspense that's only built with the hands of a director that's very, very, very good at doing so. If I had to choose who would be the perfect director for a movie like this, it would be Mike Flanagan. I love how he builds characters and how he handles suspense and scares. He would make the simple story into something special, and I can't wait to see his Exorcist movie. Shout out to Mike. Moving on. The next film is The Swamp Thing, directed by none other than Wes Craven. So I had another movie in mind when I was originally making this list, but when I found out that The Swamp Thing was a real movie, and I totally found it out by accident, I had to put it on this list specifically because I love the Alan Moore comic book iteration. Why did no one tell me that Swamp Thing had a movie? I watched the show and it was okay, but I know that it was canceled. But I never knew there was a movie, and more importantly, a movie directed by Wes Craven, who, out of all people, I love. I just don't think he was the perfect director for a Swamp Thing movie. So for that reason, this movie needs a remake. Like I said, I love the Alan Moore comic book run, and I consider that the best place to begin with. But this movie was made in 1982, which was 2 years prior to the beginning of the Moore run. And I would love to see these characters have a movie with that influence of the Alan Moore run. It doesn't even have to follow the comic book to a T, but it just could be inspired by it, because I can totally see, I'm pretty sure I'm butchering this name, but Panos Cosmatos, the director of Mandy, directing a story like Swamp Thing, because it's super psychedelic in nature, and I don't see anyone else being able to capture that aspect. He can literally just adapt the issue where Swamp Thing goes to hell and saves Abby, and that would be a movie all on its own. This inclusion is less about the remake of the movie itself, but more of a I need to see this property on the big screen. So please give Swamp Thing another chance in the modern era with a decent budget, so we can have a lot of practical effects. I know it would be a banger of horror. I mean, DC made a Clayface movie, so why not make a Swamp Thing movie? So this next inclusion I have not seen, but I'm not really motivated to see, as I heard is really dog poo poo, and that movie is The Children of the Corn, which may very well be a contender for such a great story idea that fails to meet expectations. The synopsis is a town that is overthrown by bloodthirsty children who obey some sort of evil entity called He Who Walks Behind the Rose. I don't know how this has never been a successful movie ever. It makes no sense to me. It's such a layup of a story to tell. I'm surprised this franchise has tanked, and even more surprised that the remake they did was other garbage, which I also haven't seen, but I've literally heard from everybody on the internet that it's not good. I want someone with genuine love and talent to go and direct slash write this remake. I think that's wrong with a lot of remakes that fail miserably, such as Nightmare on Elm Street remake, a lack of creativity and reliance on CGI. We do not need CGI in this movie, just good suspense, practical gore, and understanding of the campiness that comes with having deranged children as the murderers. General consensus in that the direction is really bad. So some great cinematography and good acting could go a long way with the success of this remake. We have seen good kid actors be cast and carry horror movies, specifically Stephen King horror movies like It and the show they just made. I also think that some gaps in the script that need help is because the movie is an adaptation of a short story by Stephen King. I believe that hindered the pacing of the film, which I heard was very wonky. Anyways, I can see this movie really having a solid remake that would be a great mix of campiness and pure unadulterated violence. No pun intended. Killer Clowns from Outer Space is not a bad movie, and I actually like this movie quite a bit, as it's funny, silly, and cutesy horror. The violence is fun and played for laughs, like the uppercut kill scene. This movie just knows what it's doing. But all that being said, I do think it needs a remake because for some reason this did not become a franchise, and I am baffled by that. How did this movie not spawn another two films? It's beyond me. Maybe it was too expensive with the costumes and the set design. I don't know. I just know that if remake were to be made, it would do very well in the box office. And it would do very well in this day and age because of the success that Terrifier is having. Literally, they're kind of the same thing. Two killer clowns. All they do is a bunch of mime type comedy. It perfectly fit in. It's a cult classic and lots of people would dig it. I mean, I would be there day one for sure. The final entry in this list is by far the worst movie on this list. That's The House of the Dead, 2003. Now, I personally took offense to this movie and I desperately want a remake because of how fun the video game was, right? The arcade game. Y'all remember going to the laundromat or going to Dave and Buster's? I used to play the game a lot and I loved it. This property just gives me a lot of nostalgia, and watching them butcher my boy in front of me for 90 minutes was not only torture but visual depression. This is also an easy home run of a film to make, and somehow they managed to mess it up to the nth degree. You got a whole video game to work with. It has zombies, a gothic mansion, some flying vampire monsters, if I remember correctly. And well, the less I talk about this, the better. Someone, please give me a House of the Dead remake that is better than this. Por favor. In fact, just pay me and I'll get it done by the end of the summer. On that sad note, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you all for being here. Please like and subscribe. And this has been your visit to the Horror Spaces. Peace out.